citizen science platforms as a way to impact sustainable development goals. I'm very happy to be here today with all of you, most of you online, unfortunately, but this is the new normal. I wanted also, I am welcoming, of course, the four speakers that will be with us in this session. So Patricia Santos, Susanne Hecker, James Sprinks, and François Gray. And I thank them very much for being with us today. A quick introduction on my behalf. My name is Colombe Warin. I work at the European Commission in Brussels, and I am managing the Science Within for Society program, and especially the portfolio of citizen science projects. So I'm very happy to be chairing this meeting today, because indeed we have plenty of projects that are working on platforms. And we know that in this pandemic time, platforms and especially online activities are becoming more and more important. And a little anecdote maybe to begin, I remember on the 13th of March in Brussels, when the lockdown took place, I was in contact with all my citizen science project, and I remember one that told me, how are we going to handle this lockdown? I mean, we have to stop the project. We cannot do citizen science without physical meetings. And we know now, after 7 months, I think, that of course we can. And I think that this workshop is about to show you how successfully you can run citizen science activities on platforms. So today we will have 4 different presentations of 4 successful ways to to run and to develop platforms. And I really asked, of course, the 4 speakers to take specific examples about how to tackle the SDGs specifically. And that's why, of course, you have been chosen. But a little recap on my side about what the European Commission is doing in general about citizen science under the program I manage. We have funded since the beginning of Horizon 2020, if you remember, it began in 2015 and it will end now at the end of this year, for 60 million euros, different projects on citizen science, and most of them about doing citizen science. In total, we have something like 24, about to have 28 at the very end, because we have still 4 projects that are under this grand preparation phase. And I'm very happy to have today Susanne Hecker. She is representing the German network. And then Patricia, she's representing the CS Track project, one of the SWAS project. James Sprinks, who is presenting MIX, one of the SWAS project, and François Gray, who is presenting Crowd for SDG, another SWAS project. I also wanted to tell you, but you will see that most probably tomorrow, but also it's already on Twitter. We have launched at the European Commission a new video with a strong statement from our commissioner, Maria Gabriel. She's the Commissioner for Research, Innovation and Education and Sport. And she has really a lot of expectations regarding citizen science. And in this video, which is 1.5 minutes that you will see tomorrow or on Twitter, I will share the link, of course, afterwards, how important citizen science is for the European Commission. But now let me start immediately by giving the floor to Susanne. So Susanne, you are very happily in Berlin, because this is where you work at the History Museum, Natural History Museum. And you are working more specifically on the German network for citizen science. You are also in the board of directors of EXA. So I think you are going to share with us what is the German network, which is a very powerful one, as we know, doing in terms of citizen science, and maybe give us some examples, inspiring examples about what Germany does. So I will now also tell you just that all questions will be directed at the very end of the 4 talks, if you all agree. And I will invite you maybe in the chat to put eventually the name of the specific speaker to which the answer is targeted. If you can, or if you want, if it's for everybody, of course it's for everybody. Fine, with this small introduction, I will mute myself and give the floor to Susanne. Susanne.
Thank you very much, Colombe, for your kind words and this very nice and lively introduction. I am sharing my screen right now, and just give me 1 more second. Right. Okay. There we see the nice logo. So yes, thank you very much, Colombe, for this opportunity to present the German citizen science platform called Citizens Create Knowledge, Bürger schaffen Wissen. And I'm very happy. This is my first talk in the new position of the head of this Bürger schaffen Wissen platform in Germany at the Museum für Naturkunde in Berlin, and I am here together with my colleague Nicola Mocek and Florence Mühlenbein, and we have worked on this together, obviously. So the German network platform, a citizen science platform in Germany, is a joint project between the Museum für Naturkunde and Wissenschaft im Dialog, which is a German organization which promotes discussion and dialogue about research in Germany. The project is funded by the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research, and the platform was built in 2014 along with the capacity building program for citizen science in Germany. So as I went through papers during the summer and after the first wave of Corona and lockdown, I saw this article in the conversation, which says 4 ways people stuck at home became armchair naturalists during lockdown. So exactly what you mentioned, Colombe. People hopped on to platforms, and especially citizen science platforms, and we can see from the platform that some projects have more participants, others have less. So it's, of course, we can do citizen science during lockdown. So on the German citizen science platform, and of course it is in German because the target group is the German population, you can discover projects, citizen science projects, according to your needs and wishes. For instance, if you're looking for an activity for the family, indoors, outdoors, addressing different topics. Yet also what you can do, or what we do as a project, is that we organize and offer events like training events, workshops, public events to the public, but also to our citizen science community. During Corona times, of course, we got a little bit creative as well, and set up the new format of digital lunch breaks that not like in the picture that was before Corona, but where we invite the community to come together for an hour on a Friday lunchtime break and discuss issues that are of interest to the community. And the last one at the end of September was on citizen science and the SDGs. And you see, as one of the outputs, you see this little very nice graphic recording, again in German only, but you can see it on the platform. And this, my colleague Nicola Mocek gave the input for this lunch break and discussed together with the audience. We also provide opportunities for the citizen science community in terms of networking, and we have different working groups that are established by the community, and the community and the working groups can benefit from the platform through our communication channels and networking opportunities. Now, to better understand the projects on the citizen science platform and their relation to the SDGs, my colleague Nicola Mocek led a survey in September 2020 amongst the platform projects. In total, she received 79 responses from the community. And I can only in this short time highlight very few results of this survey. So what you can see here on the first slide is that most projects self-identified in the natural sciences. They could choose several answers. This is why there are more numbers, and also, of course, the percentages are higher. But we also have cultural studies and science and social sciences and humanities. We did not get any responses from economic sciences or law studies and projects in that area. So when we look at the main project aims that the responding projects clicked, you see here 3 different shades of green, and the projects were asked to score their main project aims. And here we can see that most projects clicked as the project aim, the main project aim, answer scientific questions, but also what I find very interesting, and it links to the discussions we had this morning and the opening speeches, citizen science projects tend or aim to open up science to society, and also on third place, communicate scientific evidence. Another very interesting finding to me is the projects were asked about the tasks of citizen scientists and scientists. And you can see in green is what tasks citizen scientists are supposed to do. The blue ones are the tasks that scientists are doing in the project. Sorry, the legend has disappeared for the scientists. So the green is citizen scientists, the blue scientists. And if we just look at the 4 top ones, we can see that citizen scientists, in the opinion of the project coordinators, mainly observe like phenomena like weather, animals, headaches, or noises, or other examples. Then they measure things, like they collect things, count things, or take samples. On third place, they discuss results, which I find interesting. And then next one would be sort and categorize and describe. And if we look down at the bottom of things, there we can see that choose the scientific method, or evaluate the project impact, or administrate or organize. These are tasks that still remain with scientists. Now let's link this to citizen science and the SDGs. There has recently been a study by Schleicher and Schmidt. You see the citation at the bottom of the slide, who have looked at the projects on the citizen science platform in Germany, and they identified 3 main SDGs that the projects could be linked to. So first of all, the SDG 4, quality education. Almost all projects could be linked to this SDG because the projects provide the opportunity for high quality education and lifelong learning. Second was SDG 15, life on land. And that's a lot of the biodiversity projects and biology projects. And then also some projects could be linked to SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. Now, let me give you 2 examples for citizen science projects covered or listed on our platform. And one is can be linked to SDG 15, Life on Land, which is the German mosquito atlas. This is a monitoring project where citizens are asked to capture, not destroy, but capture mosquitoes that they find in their environments, in their homes, and they send this to a scientific institution. This project, it seems like a classical project, and the results have shown with the aid of citizens that there are populations of invasive species in Germany established, and scientists of the project have said they would never have detected them without the aid of the citizen scientists. And then another project listed on the platform, which links to the sustainable citizen communities, is called SIMRA, Sicherheit im Radverkehr, which is linked to security when you're cycling through the city, and it is a project that monitors traffic and involves the cyclists in managing or in better urban landscape planning and management. And you can find them, of course, on the website if you want to have a closer look. So to finish the whole presentation, I would like to give another input from a paper, actually a policy brief published by West and Pateman from the SEI in Stockholm in Sweden. And they both have looked at the potential of citizen science towards the SDGs. And in that policy brief, they point to 3 main types of contributions. First of all, defining national and subnational targets and metrics, which means citizens in citizen science projects could define targets at scales that are more relevant to their everyday day's life or their experience. For instance, defining criteria for broader terms like what does it mean if a target says create affordable measures. So what is affordable for people on the local ground, or reliable results. So what are reliable results for people? That might be very different to different communities. Of course, second type would be monitoring progress. And we have seen, and we know a lot of projects are monitoring projects, and they monitor also, they monitor biodiversity, or they monitor nature, but they could also be more integrated in monitoring progress towards the SDGs or attending the SDGs. And then the third type of contribution, they name implementing action. So for instance, they say through educating and inspiring people and changing their attitudes and behaviors and build partnerships, citizen science projects could aim and build more towards the SDGs. Oops. So when we look at the survey results of the German platform that I talked about earlier, we can see that there is a high potential for citizen science projects to contribute to the SDGs, because people are really involved and they have different tasks, and there are different aims that projects also want to achieve. However, if we look at these three types of contributions, we can see that there is high potential for type 1 and type 3. This leaves a lot of room for development, I would say. And I would like to point at this stage to the talk of Nicola Mocek, who will present some results tomorrow in a session, because she has also surveyed European projects, citizen science projects, also in September, where she has asked them explicitly about their contributions to the SDGs, and she has her theoretical framework builds on Western pavement, but she has also added some other categories to this. And with that, I would like to close my talk and thank the wonderful citizen science team of the German Citizen Science Platform. And I hope, I'm looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susanne, for mapping all these citizen science projects that you have on the platforms. And I can imagine that after COVID or during COVID, that we are still in, more projects will be gathered on the platform. And thank you also for showing the great team in which you are now a part of. I really liked in your speech the part you said about how COVID made us be more creative, and the lunches that you presented. I'm sure that other partners from, other institutions or other individuals from other countries would have the same ideas at their national level. We also have, I forgot to mention earlier on, developed this EU-Citizen-Science platform that, by the way, is developed by the Museum of Natural Sciences, where you work in this specific European project that is sponsored, it is supported by SWAF, Science with and for Society. So it is very important to have great national platforms, and we also want at the same time to have great ideas that could be shared at the European level, because that's, I think, what makes the beauty of Europe. So thank you for that. Moving from Germany to Europe, that's my transition. I wanted to give the floor to James. James, you work next to Oxford at Earthwatch, and you are a senior researcher on citizen science. Your specialty is about platforms and how to make all the data that you have generated being usable and being of robust quality, because I know it is also one concern about researchers in general when it comes to citizen science. So you are going to take more specifically the example of MIX, which is a project also sponsored by, supported, by the Science with and for Society program, and it is about water management. So I know you will take this example about which platform you are developing and what are the key examples that are tackling the SDGs, because that's also the topic of today. Thank you, James. You have the floor, and I see you have your presentation on. That's perfect.
Thank you. Yes, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to not be there, but be there in a way. So I'm here to present the MIX project, but more specifically to present a piece of work we did as part of the project, looking at citizen science project coordinators' point of view. So looking at their point of view regarding how they assess their impact towards the SDGs. Citizen science in its current sort of technological guise has been around at least a decade. The SDGs are 5 years old now, the original MDGs 20 years old now. So these are not particularly brand new things. So I think it's important that we get the coordinated point of view of how they measure impact and so on. So this work is part of the MIX project, which is a Horizon 2020 project with involving 6 partners, you can see on the right there, across Europe. And its main task is to develop metrics and instruments to evaluate citizen science impacts on the environment and society. And we do that through many domains, economy, environment, governance, and so on, that can be linked directly to SDGs and SDG indicators. A major part of this project is to produce the MIX platform. So the MIX platform is going to be a place where citizen science practitioners and coordinators can assess the impact of their projects, whether it be towards SDGs or more broader impacts. Because at the moment, a lot of projects don't formally assess their impact, and the ones that do, they use varying different assessment methods, and often they have to adapt them to fit their cause. So we want to provide a standardized and simplified process from which coordinators can measure the impact of their project. So in order to make this platform usable to the citizen science community, the first thing we did was, well, let's ask citizen science coordinators and practitioners their point of view. So if they ever tried to measure impact, have they looked at how their project has contributed towards the Sustainable Development Goals and so on. So we basically did a series of semi-structured interviews with 11 citizen science coordinators. They were semi-structured because we didn't want to lead them too much. We want them to give us their true, real opinions without guiding them too much towards specific things. A range of disciplines were represented by these coordinators, from astronomy to biodiversity, water quality, pollution and environment. We had a big range of project sizes, so some had 10 participants, some had over 15,000 participants. So we really tried to be inclusive in that way. And we had brand new projects that were a year old, and very established projects which were over a decade old. So the first thing we did after conducting these interviews about what these coordinators felt about impact and how it could contribute to SDGs was a bit of thematic analysis to look at which SDGs were mentioned. So building on what Susanne mentioned about the 3 main ones, we also sort of encompassed a lot of other SDGs that were perhaps more peripheral to the main aims of the project, but were also mentioned. So we've got the list there on the right: healthy lives, education, water and sanitation, infrastructure, sustainable cities, sustainable ecosystems, climate change, and so on. So we covered a range of topics through these interviews. And if we have a look at the broad sort of demographics or sort of descriptive statistics of these interviews, we sort of split up these interviews by SDG and looked at the sort of tone of the interview responses. So were they positive or negative in tone? We found quite a difference, actually. We found, as you can see clearly here, SDG 15, there were almost twice as many positive than negative comments. So SDG 15 is around sustainable ecosystems. But then on the other end of the scale at the top there, SDGs 3 and 4, there are many more negative comments. So that's health and well-being and sort of education for all. And so we were thinking, well, what are the reasons for these differences? Is it because they were more familiar with certain SDG indicators than others? And so on. So we thought we'll delve into this. So we'll look into sort of the content of these interview answers. In doing this, we found sort of 3 main themes that these issues sort of revolved around. So firstly, it was about objective measures versus subjective judgments. So citizen science coordinators preferred SDG indicators that they are objective to measure, rigorous and apply consistently. So ones they can easily link to the aims of their project, the data they collect and so on. And you can see one comment there regarding SDG 14, they actually point out a specific indicator. So 14.1.1b, plastic debris density, it will be the single greatest impact achieved by the project if we could create that. So they're actually picking out objectively measured things. On the other side of the coin, coordinator has had more of an issue with those indicators that are perhaps a little bit more subjective or qualitative in their measurement. So regarding health and well-being, for instance, although they point out that existing protocols are well defined, they often had to adapt them around their project, and they lacked the awareness and often the expertise of using other types of more subjective impact assessment. Also regarding SDG 11, they found it very difficult and non-intuitive to do this. So there's this big difference. Coordinators much prefer objective measures that they can use rather than subjective ones, because they do not have the expertise to do so. The second theme is very much linked to funding and capacity, and it is long-term versus short-term impact. So coordinators expressed an opinion that goals such as education and well-being are more long-term impacts to measure, and there's no guarantee that their project will have the funding or their team will have the capacity to fully appreciate the impact that their project has. On the other hand, the certain impacts that are perhaps more timely and more easy to measure through data collection, they saw as a big plus. So timely data they could collect could be used by multiple funders, and they could use that as a measure of impact. More timely data could engage and involve the involvement of stakeholders, which again could really prove the impact of their project. So there's a real disconnect or a difference between long-term and what was perceived to be short-term impacts and how easy they would be to measure. The final theme was regarding scope and comparisons between projects. So one person regarding SDG 13, which is regarding climate change, thought it was a very useful to discuss common goals and desired outcomes with other projects, and use it as a way to advance the field of citizen science. However, there's also a risk that because some of the scope of some of the SDGs are quite global or international in scale, that you realise that your project is in a way insignificant and really have a global impact. So coordinators had a fear that by using SDGs, they might realise that actually their impact is not something they can really shout about. They also thought comparison with traditional scientific methods could really add credibility to the citizen science community, so showing where citizen science can fill in the gaps of more traditional science, and so on. Although there was also, on the other side of the coin, this feeling that it's hard to compare their projects with others, and this, I think, goes again with the scope of the project, how they're all very different. So some projects have a very small, say, geographical scope, some are global. And so coordinators felt it was perhaps unfair to compare those projects. So what are the lessons learned through this process? So despite this being, and it's worth reiterating, this was very much a first attempt and a small sample of getting the coordinators' point of view about impact, how they measure it, and their contribution to the SDGs. It was very representative. We had a lot of disciplines represented, a lot of different project sizes, and a lot of different sort of ages of project. And there were a number of cross-cutting themes apparent. So I'll reiterate again. There's definitely a more positive attitude when the contribution or impact they make towards SDGs is objectively and directly measurable through the indicator and easily connected to their scientific aim. Time scale matters. So coordinators feel that longer term impacts, perhaps regarding, say, educational well-being, often go beyond funding periods, and they do not have the provision to really fully evaluate that. And the scope of the SDGs and often their global or international broadness can affect the coordinated confidence of their project's potential impact. So that's something we really need to be aware of if we want to really engage citizen science coordinators into sort of assessing their impact towards SDGs and so on. So how will the mixed platform help? So through this process, we're hoping to combine existing and new methodologies and metrics and make them accessible to practitioners who may be unfamiliar for them. So some of these more subjective and qualitative assessment measures will try and provide tools so people can go through this process in a more understanding, intuitive fashion. Mix will provide a space for each project which is flexible and updatable. So again, considering how some impacts towards SDGs might be long or shorter term. So we'll try and make that an easy process to update, being understanding that funding periods of capacity might be reduced the longer term the impact is. We'll try and find meaningful comparisons with other endeavours and trends and contributions so that coordinators don't feel overwhelmed by the sort of scope, the global scope of some of the SDGs, and that their projects are seen in the right context. And finally, mix will evolve. What's very clear from this process is that new types of citizen science are always appearing, and hopefully mix will adapt and change and improve how impact is measured. And of course, SDGs could change as societal opinion and societal issues grow and wane over time. So we need to adapt with that. So just to finally say, the mixed platform tools will be developed now and will be made live at the end of September, or the third quarter of September. And we really want this to be a user-centered process. So anyone who's following on or listening, if you're a practitioner of citizen science, if you run a project, we really want to hear from you. We really want to make sure that we develop this platform with you in mind and so on. So there's some ways to contact there, so do get in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, James. And I really welcome your speech, because as you know, in any European projects sponsored by the European Commission, we very much favor impact. And why? Of course, because it's important. That's the most important thing, but also because at the end of the day, like it is the moment now when we are negotiating our new program, we are under the scrutiny of the European Parliament and the Council, and they are the budgetary authorities, and they are asking us, what are you doing with the citizens' money? Are you wisely using the citizens' money, which is the EU budget? And indeed, we must, and we have been doing since, the midterm of Horizon 2020, a lot of course, information given to the Parliament regarding impact. So thank you so much for developing important tools like that. Let me now turn to François Gray. François, I just wanted, if you agree, just before your speech, to have a little this little video that the European Commission foresee, and it was a request from our Commissioner Maria Gabriel. She's very keen in fostering citizen science, and this will be the case in Horizon Europe. And this will be also the case in the new pilot call that we are developing on the Green Deal. Thank you so much, Falco, for showing this video. It's 1.5 minutes, so be attentive. Thank you.
Interactions between citizens, scientists, businesses, and policymakers are essential to enrich research and to reinforce society's trust in science and innovation. We need to open up more science for citizens so that research and innovation aligns with their needs and values.
Thanks to the Crowd4 SDG project, my student team and I are now addressing water scarcity in my city, Monterrey. We plan to use citizen science and AI to detect water leaks in the distribution system so that less water is lost in a year.
Action provides funding and support to citizen science initiatives that work with communities that are underrepresented in science, like disempowered youth or people with visual impairment. In these projects, volunteers learn how to collect data about different forms of pollution, how to build and use sensors to measure air pollution in the areas they live in, or to grow their own vegetables without pesticides.
Initiatives have to be taken on the local or on the regional level. In Terrifica, we invite citizens to mark climate change hotspots on a digital map. We then involve them in co-creation processes to develop climate change action plans.
Together, we can enlarge our collective capabilities and the scope of innovative solutions.
Thank you very much, Falco, for showing the video. And I'm very proud to show it today for two reasons. First, because it's the first release ever that we have done today for the German presidency. And secondly, because I'm very proud to welcome François, which project has been featured in this video. The project of François will tell you more about it. It's called Crowd for SDG. It's a project that began during the COVID crisis on the 1st of May. And I think that's also a good reason, François, why you can explain how citizen science can be very effective during COVID. So you are associate professor at the University of Geneva. You have created in 2009 the first citizen science lab in Europe called Citizen Cyber Lab. And you have been involved on the Swiss hackathon, in the EU hackathon, in a lot of activities of citizen science involving platforms. So please, François, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Colombe. So I'm going to switch to presentation mode. And I hope everybody sees this. And we are, just move forward a slide. So I'm presenting the Crowd for SDG project, as you mentioned, and one of the core components, a platform known as the Citizen Science Solution Kit that we are putting together during this project, which, as you correctly stated, started rather fatefully on the 1st of May in the middle of lockdown. So the overall aim of Crowd for SDG is to explore and to assess whether and to what degree scientific standards and with which scientific standards citizen science can contribute both to tracking progress towards the SDGs and also generating grassroots innovation that enables such progress. So resonating with the previous talk on mix, I think this idea of measuring progress towards the SDGs, but also this feeling of being able to innovate and have an impact. Both these dimensions are important. In this project, we really got going very fast, and I want to salute the European Commission because they turned around and invited about 200 projects, including ours, to basically to reorient, to repurpose some of our funding immediately address this pandemic situation and the future that we could see beyond it. So we were able to do something that wasn't even planned when we wrote the proposal long before the pandemic and run right away in July a one-month summer school for about 70 young people from around the world, basically getting them to innovate for a sustainable post-pandemic world. So this was called the Open 17 Summer Challenge. And just to say that Open 17 refers to a platform for online coaching that we launched in 2015 at the time that the SDGs were announced. This was together with New York University's Governance Lab, Beth Novak, and currently the managing director of the Citizen Science Center Zurich, Rosie Mondardini. So we've been running Open 17 challenges with young people, and in fact, people of all ages, for several years now on Zoom. We've been using Zoom for 5 years to do that. So we weren't too surprised in the lockdown and could adapt a full summer school to run on Zoom and several other platforms. These were the challenges that people were invited to address in this one-month summer challenge. And each one was essentially mentored and directed by a university group, research group from all around the world. You see New York, Beijing, Paris, Geneva, Zurich. This is a typical picture that I think many of us are now quite used to of a Zoom session. These are, in fact, the mentors and advisors. And what you see is they're coming from the university world, but we also had people representing investment in sustainable development, incubators that house sustainable development projects. So really bringing these young people into contact with the sort of organizations that could help them take their project further. And because we're here in Geneva, we involve some of the international organizations here, and most obviously the World Health Organization, which is just up the street from where I'm speaking to you from. We're in this thing called the SDG Solution Space at the University of Geneva, as well as CERN, the Particle Physics Lab, and several other UN institutions. What happened in the summer school is we immediately switched to this hybrid mode that in fact this conference is in too, where some people were together in Fab Lab and Makerspace, actually at the KEY Lab in Paris, University of Paris being one of our partners. Some people were online from just about every corner of the planet. Every continent was represented, 20 countries, 16 time zones. So we had teams that were fully in person in a Fab Lab. We had hybrid teams with some people in a lab and some people online contributing. And then we had some fully online teams. And the way this platform works, Open17, is we have rapid cycling of agile development of their projects, so that every week they have to pitch a new version of the project that's been sort of radically changed by feedback from the mentors and other experts and from their peers in sessions that happen online. So we were meeting online several hours a day, and then the teams were working either offline or amongst themselves on different platforms during the rest of their days. I won't go into a lot of detail about the projects and outcomes, but we had some really star projects. Each week there were prizes. The prizes were monetary, that we invest in the projects. We give them tokens that are worth, that they can translate into investment in their project. And the project that you saw briefly in the video earlier, the commission's video, was Digital Water. This was actually a team from Monterrey in Mexico, using AI and crowdsourcing, as they mentioned, to look at how to solve water supply issues where they were. And that project's now in a local incubator. We had a project that was, that was a project where the team was all together in one city. We had projects where the people participating were in Fab Labs in 4 places around the world, social spacers. We had other projects that were in specific rural area in Africa and Malawi, trying to help WHO with the COVID crisis. So many different approaches to dealing with the pandemic and also post-pandemic SDG-related issues were developed by these student teams. So switching now just briefly to the Citizen Science Solution Kit. So our idea in this training that we give, this online coaching, which is core to the Crowd for SDG program, which will happen multiple times a year during the project, is to introduce these teams to tools that they could use from this solution kit and citizen science tools that they could use to enhance or develop their projects. These tend to be existing tools. We're not developing new tools. Some of them are ones that we developed within previous projects or that we've adopted from other communities or that are standalone platforms or tools that we think are just very useful. Some of them are open source, most of them indeed. Part of our project's goal with the partners you see here, so University of Geneva, CERN, the CSIC, which is the Spanish National Research Council. Barcelona has a big AI lab at CSIC. Politecnico di Milano, University of Paris, and UNITAR, the UN Institute for Training and Research. These partners are looking at, amongst other things, how AI and social media analysis can be used to enhance and enrich citizen participation in citizen science projects. Just to give you 4 examples of tools that we use in this solution kit. So this is one example, Goodwall. Goodwall is it's a platform itself for youth to work on sustainability issues and other basically issues about improving their environment, their communities. And what we use this for, this platform, it's basically, I would call it TikTok for the SDGs. So the students can post 1-minute videos, and we actually evaluate them at the moment we select them. But we also, on a weekly basis, as you see here, we can see how their pitches are improving because they can post their 1-minute pitches on this platform. So that's one example of a tool or platform we're using. SDG-In-Progress. This was developed out of Media Lab at MIT by a PhD student there, Tiffany Tsong, and has been developed further by a master's student here, Ode Darwich, and is being spun off now. So it's a platform for documentation of projects that allows you to document, as you see here, week by week or idea by idea, how your project has improved and developed. And so this is a way also, because it's fully open and shared online, to have projects develop not only through the course of one coaching session, but year on year as teams can come back and build on what other teams have done. Citizen Science Project Builder. So this was developed by the Citizen Science Center in Zurich together with our Citizen Cyber Lab here in Geneva. This is built on a platform called PyBossa, which is an open source platform for crowdsourcing or microtasking, if you will. And what we're showing here was one of the projects Colombe was referring to that we ran during the hackathons during the lockdown, in particular EU versus virus. And the idea here was to rapidly sort through large amounts of social media data about how people are wearing masks. So what you see on the left is what the citizen scientist or participant can do in terms of analyzing the image step by step. And this questionnaire unfolds gradually so that if the picture is useful, gradually you get more and more detail about what's going on in the picture. And some of this could be automated with AI, but a lot of it needs human intervention. And this is where we see a really useful symbiosis between AI and citizen science. Lastly, I mentioned a platform that we are going to be using more in the future, existing platform called Decidim, developed in Barcelona and in other regions of Spain for crowd deliberation, for democratic development of ideas. And we're very interested to apply this to citizen science projects and to get people debating how to develop their citizen science projects on this platform. Again, combining AI methods to help and enhance and converge discussions more rapidly on such a platform. So that was a quick overview of the Crowd4SDG project and the Citizen Science Solution Kit. And you can, of course, find out more on our website and follow us on Twitter. And happy to answer any questions about this later.
Thank you, François, for all these good examples that you shared with us. I know you have many more, so I'm sure, and I hope that if there are young people in the audience that they have been inspired and they will like maybe to join one of your new Open 17 challenge. But because you finished with the Barcelona examples, it's a perfect transition for me to present you our last speaker, Patricia Santos, coming from the University Pompeu Fabra, where you are a researcher in learning technologies. You are also working on the CS Track project, one of the Science with and for Society project. And I would like you to present us briefly what is the CS Track database and how you're going to build it with all these things that we want to do today, which is increasing the knowledge about citizen science activities. Patricia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Colombe, and good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be part of this panel today. You can do double click over my presentation to maximize the screen. So, as Colombe has said, I'm going to present today one of the main contributions of the SDGs project, a database that we think that can be a central database of citizen science projects in Europe that can be key to understand the connection of citizen science and SDGs. This is the content of my presentation, but you will see it as follows. First, in order to contextualize the content of this presentation, I wanted to discuss about why the task that we are going to do in SDGs is important. And it is important because traditional data sources are not sufficient for measuring the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This data is mainly collected by global databases maintained by international organizations or national statistical offices or government agencies. And the problem with the collection of this data is that it's very costly in terms of time and money, and it has been shown that it's not sufficient. So for this reason, recent studies have shown the value of using data from citizen science for the SDGs, and for this reason, we are participating in this conference today. So it is necessary to promote dialogue on data quality between citizen science platforms and citizen science projects. It is necessary the use of data management standards and metadata and interoperability. These are key actions for citizen science platforms sharing data about citizen science projects. And in this context, there is the PPSR core metadata standard proposed by Cavalier et al. And the Wilson Center. The thing is that in this context, promoting this dialogue and promoting the use of metadata standards, this is a relatively slow process. And in the meantime, in SDGs, we have been trying to understand better what is the current situation of the use of data by citizen science platforms. So I invite you to visit our website, csstrack.eu. The main goal of our project is to understand better the existing knowledge about citizen science, no? And especially about online projects. So one of the main contributions, this is only one of the contributions of SDGs beyond others, is the building of a central database that the main aim of this database is to compile a comprehensive collection of citizen science projects, mainly visible on the web. And we are focused on citizen science projects of the European Union and associated countries. So the techniques that we are applying to collect this data are based on a quantitative approach that relies on web-based data mining and network analytics. So SDGs is a 3 years project, and we are almost finishing the first year. So the content that we are presenting today is based on the first version of the database. This database contains, at the moment, data extracted and validated from 42 different citizen science platforms. And the process that we have followed to identify these platforms is based on the help of SDGs partners and experts from different countries that help us to identify these citizen science platforms. what we have done is to analyze information from key national citizen science platforms in Europe using web scraping and extraction techniques. And additionally, we plan to contact experts to extend the information that we have at the moment in our database. So far, we have data from more than 12,000 projects stored in the database. And the data structure of our database is aligned with the metadata standard. Here in this picture, you can see what we can do with the data that we have in our database. And what we can do with the data is, for instance, dashboards that can be used by a public audience to interact with the information that we have in the database. So for instance, here you can see information about the number of citizen science platforms that we have analyzed, the number of countries that we have covered, the number of languages, other information that you can find, as for instance, the type of platforms, the number of projects, or for instance, the number of platforms count by country till the moment. You can use this link to explore the dashboard if you wish. So how the CSTRAC database can contribute in the reporting of SDGs? We can follow the methodology proposed by Freyds. And what we think that we can do is that, first of all, we need to identify targets and indicators. So it is necessary to relate the data that we have in the database with specific targets and indicators that are related with the field of the SDGs. The second task that we should do is to identify the descriptors to elaborate specific metrics related to the sustainable and development goals. Here, what we have done in this dashboard, I will share the link with you because I think that is hidden with this image, is that what we have done is that this is a first exercise that we have done to relate the data that we have at the moment in the database with some information that is related with some specific SDGs. So, for instance, we can find that at the moment, 111 projects are related with the health topic. 9 projects are related with the pollution. We have 19 platforms with educational resources and 449 projects with tools, materials, and resources related to education. Related to the topic of COVID, what we have is that we can find information of projects that are mentioning the term COVID in their description. So some limitations that we have found till the moment when we have been analyzing this data. So something that has been mentioned by Muki today in the plenary session is that one limitation is the broad definition of citizen science. So this is a limitation because what we have done to the moment is that we have analyzed information from citizen science platforms that they describe their platform as a citizen science platform, but we have not covered other platforms that could be analyzed as well, no? So here we mentioned that the selection criteria that we have applied is that platform associations with web pages that identify projects as citizen science, and we are only covering platforms from Europe and associated countries. One major barrier that we have observed is the quality of data that is not a standard at the moment in some platforms. So some conclusions and next steps that we plan is that we think that there is still work to be done to standardize the data structure of citizen science platforms, and of course of information of projects visible online. We think that it is necessary to obtain extra information on applying advanced data analysis. So it is necessary to define a data vocabulary for each descriptor to standardize the information. It is necessary an alignment between the metadata standard and the relation with the SDG indicators. And something that we plan to do is to publish open data sets that can be used by external researchers and by the public audience, and to publish also a dashboard with information relating citizen science information and the SDGs. These are some references that I have used to prepare this presentation. And I would like to thank you for your attention, and a special thanks to some members of our CSTRA consortium. Thank you for your time. And of course, I am open to questions.
Thank you very much, Patricia. I know all of you had a lot to share today. Unfortunately, we had a very limited time in terms of, and I'm afraid we won't have time really for the questions and answers. I want really, on behalf of the questions that I have seen in the chat, say something globally. I mean, I'm not answering everything, but I hope that each speaker would agree to receive some questions at a later stage. But just to answer one question I saw about the multiplicity of platforms that has been presented today, I must say that that is what, in general, we want in Europe, of course, to have a multiplicity of activities, of organizations, leading platforms, etc. But at one point, we also realized at the European Commission, and that's why we fostered this program about doing citizen science, that there is a need to gather the best practice and the good and the best projects and the best tools on one platform, and this platform is the EU-Citizen-Science platform. It is run by the Museum of Natural and History in Berlin. It is a European initiative. It is fully supported by the European Commission. After the end of the project, it will not disappear. It will be hosted by EXA, and this is something very important in terms of, for us, of sustainability. So I really encourage, of course, every local, regional, national initiative at the level of platforms, but I also say that we need to also foster and have a strong Europe at the level of citizen science. So unfortunately, we had so many things to say that there's not real time for questions. I know that the community manager gathered all the questions. I hope, and that's a question to you, Patricia, James, Susanne, and François. Would you agree at a later stage to answer the questions from the numerous participants of today's session? It's a yes. It's muted, but it's a yes. Fantastic. Okay, very important, because indeed this workshop of today was an appetizer of all the diversity of activities in citizen science that are run on platforms, but there is more to share in the networking part of this conference, of course, but in all the years to come that will make flourish citizen science. So really, I want to thank the organizers because they did a fantastic job in this very difficult period. And I want to thank you all for being there on time, listening. And yes, maybe just think we would have needed half an hour more for questions. Thank you very much to everybody, and see you soon in Zoom, or maybe one time in the real life. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Colombe, for organizing. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.